complications of heart failure, embolism, or atrial fibrillation which is uncontrolled. So I try to discuss some of the concepts of the medical management. First of all, valvular heart disease is a major cause of disability in India. Reduced quality of life and premature mortality is very high. So in the medical management of valvular heart disease, the sequelae of disease is some patients get atrial fibrillation, some has embolic events, some LV dysfunction, pulmonary hypertension, and endocarditis, which is nowadays decreasing. So coming to a case scenario, we had a 30-year-old female patient presented with severe dyspnea, severe mitral regurgitation, AF with fast ventricular rate, pulmonary hypertension, and heart failure. Echo suggestive of RHD with severe mitral regurgitation, severe PAH, severe TR, LV dysfunction, RV dysfunction. This was her ECG, which is suggestive of atrial fibrillation, left ventricular hypertrophy. So, after medical stabilization, diuretics, heart rate control, and anticoagulation, she was initially advised for surgery. 1 month later, however, she didn't undergo surgery at that time. 1 month later, repeat echo showed moderate MR, mild PH, mild TR, and normal LV and RV function. TMT was 9 meds, so there was no indication for surgery. This suggests that sometimes young patients present with involvement of myocardium also. Myocarditis also exacerbates these regurgitant lesions, and that over a period of time, myocarditis subsides and original valvular regurgitant lesions are less. So basic principle of medical management are accurate diagnosis, assessment of severity by echo, prevent and treat the complications like infective.
Was that a real case?
Yes, sir.
Was that a real
yes,
case?
Yes, a reported case.
So then, before doing treadmill, why surgery was advised after stabilization?
Initially, when patient develops actually it is a reported case in some journal. So at one center, she was advised for surgery. 1 month later, she didn't undergo surgery. After 1 month, repeat evaluation in some medical college was done. And at that time, there was minimal regurgitant lesions. So at that time, she was advised for surgery.
Was she given any, if it's a reported case,
Yes,
was she given digitalis or beta blocker?
Digitalis and beta blocker both, sir, to control atrial fibrillation. Both drugs were given.
And it was just rate control only, or sinus rhythm was achieved?
Rate control.
Rate control. With that rate control, we did treadmill.
Do we do treadmill?
Sir, I will come to that.
I was just little.
There are some indications in valvular heart disease that we should do treatment in asymptomatic and mild to moderate lesions.
But patient
We didn't do actually regularly, but it is advised, it is written in the books that some asymptomatic patient who should be intervened. For that purpose, we should do treadmill, exercise, PA pressure. After exercise in mitral valve disease, after exercise, PA pressure is increasing by 50 mm of Hg. More than then, we should intervene as early as possible.
But she was very asymptomatic.
That was taking the initial involvement of myocardium. That is active rheumatic fever was also
It
there.
is reverted and you do a TMT, you put it back in failure.
So what you said, acute rheumatic fever was there.
Well, involvement of myocardium due to active fever, active rheumatic involvement is also there, which subsides over a period of time. Myocarditis part subsides.
So you haven't mentioned this in the history.
Yes, sir.
You haven't mentioned that patient had acute rheumatic fever.
Yes, sir. But I'm taking the course of progression. That initially it was severe failure, severe regurgitation of the both valves, mitral and tricuspid.
So essentially it has been worsened because of AF with high VR.
Yes, yes.
That is what you want to say.
Other thing I want to say is regurgitant lesions are exacerbated by involvement of myocardium initially. When myocardial inflammation subsides, the original regurgitation decreases.
Then at least CPK and all this should have put.
Yes.
CRP, CPK. And this patient was having purely MR, no MS at all.
No.
સાહેબ આને ટ્રેડમિલમાં લ્યો સાહેબ તમે જયેશ
મારા 5000 ટ્રેડમિલ લીધા નથી.
So what are the factors that leading to over-assessment of valvular heart disease, which includes anemia, pregnancy, atrial fibrillation with fast ventricular rate, some kind of infection like pneumonia or any other sepsis, active rheumatic carditis, infective endocarditis, thyrotoxicosis, and pulmonary embolism, COPD, asthma. In the asymptomatic patient, clinical decision making is more difficult. Surgical correction should be done at the appropriate point in the natural history of the disease. So, accurate timing of surgery is very important. So, generally, expected outcome on medical therapy must be balanced against potential benefit and risk of the proposed intervention. So, when valve replacement is the only option, intervention is deferred until clear symptoms supervene or there is definite evidence of LV dysfunction. And valve replacement is the change of one disease to another disease. It is not a cure. Because post valvular replacement we do find complications like infective endocarditis, prosthetic valve thrombosis, which is very common in India. Patient usually stops anticoagulants and comes with fulminant failure. So, coming to medical management, patient with history of rheumatic fever has a high risk of recurrence. Prognosis and natural history of rheumatic heart disease is strongly influenced by rheumatic fever recurrences. Prevention of recurrent episode of rheumatic fever is critical. Benzodiazepine penicillin once in 3 weeks is the most effective regimen. Prevention of embolic events, particularly in mitral stenosis patients, are very important. We have such patients here with both femoral artery thrombosis right now due to embolism of the LA cord. So, symptomatic embolism occur in 10 to 20% of the patients with MS, may occur even in previously asymptomatic patient. It is due to LA thrombus in patient with dilated LA with or without AF. Embolic events due to calcific debris from the aortic and mitral are much less common. So, anticoagulation is required in any AF, it is paroxysmal, persistent or permanent AF. INR should be maintained between 2 and 3. In mitral stenosis, previous embolic event or LA thrombus, even if it is sinus lesion, then you should anticoagulate it. If LA dimension is more than 50 mm or spontaneous echo contrast is seen, then it is a high risk for embolism and you should anticoagulate that patient.
But in today's time, do we see LA dimension or you will see LA volume index?
No sir, for valvular heart disease we see LA dimension. Diastolic dysfunction we do LA volume index. This is severe MS showing spontaneous echo contrast in LA. This is where LA clot where the LA roof. This is ball valve thrombus, very high risk of embolism in this kind of thrombosis. It is a very mobile thrombus, looks like myxoma. So another thing is prevention of infective endocarditis. Current guidelines says no longer endocarditis prophylaxis needed in native valvular heart disease. Previous endocarditis is the only indication for prophylaxis in any procedure.
One thing you find your
Sir, perineural is prevent the recurrence of rheumatism, not for
Dental procedure के करवा ना?
one thing you do.
So, sir, in prosthetic valve or any prosthetic material used for any cardiac valve repair or previous infective endocarditis there or any congenital heart disease which is unrepaired, including palliative shunts and conduits, or completely repaired congenital heart disease with any prosthetic material or device, or any residual defect is there after correcting congenital heart disease, then only there are indications for prevention of infective endocarditis. As such, routinely there are no indication for prevention of infective endocarditis. It is a vegetation on the mitral valve, it is vegetation on the aortic valve causing severe aortic regurgitation. This is complication of infective endocarditis. This is infective endocarditis of tricuspid valve causing severe TR. So current recommendation is that bacteremia due to normal daily activities such as brushing the teeth, chewing, it is much more frequent than bacteremia related to dental procedure. So in any dental procedure, routine prophylaxis is not indicated. This is a new guideline. And if there is manipulation of gingival tissue or mucosa, then only you should give an antibiotic prophylaxis, which is also they give like oral cephalosporin, so that is enough. And risk of adverse reaction to the antibiotic is higher than any potential benefit, and most important factor in reducing daily bacteremia is maintaining optimal oral health and hygiene, including regular dental care. General health maintenance is more important. Maintain of normal body weight, remain physically fit, no restriction. This is the important question every day we ask in OPD. sinus syndrome. Normal LV size, normal LV function, and normal PA pressure at rest and with exercise. There is no restriction to physical activity or competitive sports. Severe asymptomatic valve disease, regular low level aerobic activity is advised. Heavy strenuous exercise is not advised. Participation in competitive sports and strenuous activities should be avoided in severe cases. So who should not participate in any competitive sports? It includes severe mitral stenosis with any degree with an exercise PA pressure is more than 50 mm of Hg, severe MR with pulmonary hypertension, LV dilatation, and LV systolic dysfunction. Severe
This PA pressure is a mean PA pressure.
yes sir, mean pressure. Severe aortic stenosis and severe aortic regurgitation and LV dilatation. Avoid sports with risk of bodily contact who are on anticoagulant, so who has chance of bleeding, so that should be avoided. Who can participate in all competitive sports? Mild mitral stenosis, normal sinus rhythm, and exercise PA pressure less than 50 mm of Hg. Mild to moderate MR in normal sinus rhythm with normal LV size and normal LV function. Mild aortic stenosis can undergo, and mild to moderate AR with normal LV size, they can do physical activities. Periodic non-invasive monitoring. So changes in any valve anatomy or motion, increase in severity of stenosis or regurgitation, LV, RV dilatation, hypertrophy or dysfunction, and secondary effects such as pulmonary hypertension, AF should be evaluated periodically. So generally, in aortic stenosis, if it is mild, every 3 to 5 years follow-up is required. If it is severe, annual follow-up is required. In aortic regurgitation, if it is mild, every 2 to 3 yearly follow-up, echo is required. In severe aortic regurgitation, annual follow-up, and if severe regurgitation with LV dilatation is there and patient is asymptomatic, then 6 to 12 months follow-up is required. In mitral stenosis, 2 to 3 yearly follow-up is required, and in severe mitral stenosis, if area is less than 1 cm square, 6 to 12 months is required. And in mitral regurgitation, mild mitral regurgitation required 2 to 3 yearly follow-up. Severe mitral regurgitation with normal LV size, annual follow-up is required, and severe mitral regurgitation with change in LV size or function, 6 monthly follow-up is required. Coming to pregnancy and valvular heart disease, generally regurgitant lesions are well tolerated, and mild to moderate obstructive lesions are well tolerated during pregnancy. They can be managed medically even in decompensation occurs. Simple measures are bed rest, oxygen, avoidance of supine position, and patient education can be very effective. Patient with severe mitral stenosis, balloon mitral valvolectomy can be done during second trimester of pregnancy, and elective AVR prior to pregnancy in severe aortic. If it is detected before pregnancy, then we can do AVR first. In non-cardiac surgery in patient with valvular heart disease, so most adults with mild to moderate valvular heart disease can safely undergo any non-cardiac surgery. Accurate assessment of severity and symptoms should be done before surgery. Hemodynamic monitoring in perioperative period. Optimization of loading conditions, and when the left-sided valve obstruction is very severe, relief of stenosis before non-cardiac surgery may be considered. Patient education is very important. Patient education is the key compliance with periodic monitoring. We should advise for anticoagulation, regular follow-up, all that. Each patient should understand the expected prognosis, potential complication, typical symptoms, and rationale for sequential monitoring and indication for intervention. So coming to specific specific valvular lesions, mitral stenosis has what we should do. So prevention of recurrent rheumatic fever, prevention and treatment of complication, monitoring of disease progression to allow intervention at the optimal time of point. This is the echo image of mitral stenosis. This is initially mild mitral stenosis. This is severe mitral stenosis. Showing orifice area gradient of 23, mean gradient of 23 mm. This is dilated LA with spontaneous echo contrast in the LA. So generally, first bout of dyspnea and mitral stenosis occur during exercise, pregnancy, fever, infection, atrial fibrillation, anemia, or hyperthyroidism. In medical treatment of mitral stenosis, anemia and infection should be treated promptly and aggressively. Diuretics and salt restriction useful for treating mild symptoms. Beta blockers attenuate increase in heart rate, especially during exertion, and optimize diastolic filling, improve the exercise capacity. And digoxin has no role in patient with sinus rhythm. In only atrial fibrillation, digoxin is needed. Complication of mitral stenosis like hemoptysis. To reduce pulmonary venous pressure, sedation is required sometimes, assumption of upright position and aggressive diuresis is required. AF is very common, with dilated LF is most commonly resistant AF. So more related to age and then to stenosis severity. Less than 30 years, there are 10% incidence of AF in rheumatic mitral stenosis. As age progresses greater than 50 years, almost 50% patient of the have recurrent AF. So when patient presents with acute atrial fibrillation with rapid ventricular rate, that needs immediate rate control. There are no goals for rhythm control. So beta blocker or rate reducing calcium channel blocker like diltiazem and verapamil are the first drug of choice. If these are ineffective or when additional rate control is necessary, then digoxin or amiodarone can be used. And if patient is unstable hemodynamically, immediate DC cardioversion is indicated after recurrent atrial. Rate control is generally achieved by digoxin, beta blocker, calcium channel blocker, or combination of these agents. Adequacy of the rate control should be monitored, that is at rest 60 to 80 per minute and during activity up to 110 per minute. There are two theories actually, absolute rate control and lenient rate control. In lenient rate control, they accept the rest heart rate between 100 to 110 also. If with inadequate rate control, there is risk of developing tachycardiomyopathy. In chronic AF, mild elective cardioversion is required in mild MS without marked dilatation, and AF is less than 6 to 12 months of duration. Anticoagulant is definitely required in patients with MS with AF, which are high risk of stroke, 15% per year, with Alaclor or previous thromboembolic phenomenon. Low dose aspirin may be added if required. In moderate to severe MS, mitral valve area less than 1.5 cm square, symptomatic patient NYHA class 3 or 4, we should intervene that patient. Asymptomatic patient with pulmonary hypertension, PS systolic pressure more than 50 mm rate and greater than 60 mm with exercise. Coming to mitral regurgitation, major causes of mitral regurgitation are rheumatic heart disease, mitral valve prolapse, infective endocarditis, annular calcification of the mitral valve as age progresses, cardiomyopathy and ischemic heart disease. And in asymptomatic chronic MR, generally there is no specific therapy recommended. Chronic MR secondary to ischemic or dilated cardiomyopathy, preload reduction, that is diuretics, is beneficial in that patient. These are the images of mitral regurgitation. This is plain PML, mitral valve prolapse. This is LA area dilated, so ischemic MR, there is such no intrinsic abnormality of the mitral valve. In acute mitral regurgitation, the patient has pulmonary flooding, so afterload reducing agents are effective and life-saving. Intravenous nitroprusside, ACE inhibitors and other vasodilators are needed in acute MR. Intravenous diuretics, dovitamin if patient is hypotensive, and IABP to stabilize before surgery in acute MR condition. In chronic MR, afterload is actually compensated in chronic MR. Due to chronic regurgitation of the mitral, body's compensatory mechanism are such that the patient has arterial dilatation already. So afterload reducing agents are not required as such, and systemic vasodilators like ACE inhibitor has not benefit in chronic severe MR. Chronic MR medical therapy, vasodilators when they are indicated in LV dysfunction, if patient is having hypertension or in congestive heart failure who are not candidate for surgery at that time. Beta blockers are required with LV dysfunction and hypertension is there, and AF to rate control and anticoagulation is required in chronic MR. Indication for surgery, acute severe MR is always indication for surgery. In chronic severe MR, symptoms class 3, class 4. In asymptomatic patient, patient's ejection fraction is decreasing if it is less than 60% and systolic dimension more than 40 mm, new onset of atrial fibrillation in MR, and PA pressure more than 50 mm Hg at rest, they require surgery. In mitral valve prolapse, beta blockers are required for palpitation secondary to frequent VPCs or self-terminating episodes of SVT. Chest discomfort in either it is CAD, coronary artery disease related, or symptom caused by regional ischemia secondary to MVP. In that patients, beta blockers are required. Aspirin is documented for focal neurological event in some patients with LA clot or atrial fibrillation. This is the AML product which causes severe MR. In MVP, indications for surgery are similar. MV repair is possible in mitral valve collapse over 90% of the patient, so we do not require generally mitral valve replacement. And threshold for surgical treatment is lower in this kind of patients. They are generally more symptomatic than rheumatic patients. Coming to aortic stenosis, this is the natural history of aortic stenosis. It is a very long latent period, and once onset of the symptoms occurs, there is a dictum called angina, syncope and failure, 2, 3 and 5 years. So this is the natural survival of the aortic stenosis. This is the calcific aortic stenosis, mean gradient of 90 mm Hg. As such, aortic stenosis has very limited medical treatment. The most important principle is patient education regarding course of the disease, typical symptom and physical activity. Close clinical follow-up is required. Exercise testing we do not do in aortic stenosis actually, and coronary artery disease is prevalent in that age. So it is the symptoms are generally due to coronary artery disease or due to AS. That is very difficult to judge by clinical. So in calcific, the role of statin in calcific aortic stenosis, it is similar to atherosclerosis. One hypothesis was that has led to hypothesis that disease progression might be prevented by lipid lowering therapy. But 3 randomized control trials did not show any benefit in prevention of progression of AS and decrease the rate of AVR. So there are no indication for statin in calcific aortic stenosis. ACE inhibitors are also no benefit. Generally, 30% of the patients with aortic stenosis is a low cardiac output state. So generally blood pressure remains reduced in that kind of patient. But 30% of the patients have high blood pressure with aortic stenosis. So how we should treat it and why the aortic stenosis has hypertension? So that is a theory which is called due to low cardiac output there is low renal perfusion which activates the renin-angiotensin system, and that patient has hypertension. So in that patient ACE inhibitors are beneficial. In symptomatic severe aortic stenosis, AVR is the only option. Medical therapy for inoperable patient and stabilization before surgery is indicated. Diuretics are only beneficial when patient is in CHF and which these patients have very poor prognosis. Must be used with caution due to hypovolemia which may produce orthostatic hypotension. And diuretics may worsen the symptoms as mid-cavity ventricular obstruction develops in the small hypertrophic and hyperdynamic ventricle. So diuretics are generally avoided in aortic stenosis. And if it is required, it indicates high LV and diastolic pressure, which has a very poor prognosis. So ACE inhibitors should be used with caution and beneficial in patients with symptomatic LV dysfunction. In SCOPE trial, ACE inhibitors was well tolerated in 2004 and should be initiated at very low doses, increase slowly to target doses, avoiding the hypotension. Beta blockers can depress the myocardial function and induce left ventricular failure. So in aortic stenosis, beta blockers should be avoided. Atrial fibrillation or atrial flutters occurs in less than 10% of the patient with severe aortic stenosis. Loss of atrial contribution to the ventricular filling and sudden falling cardiac output may cause serious hypertension in this kind of patients. So AF should be treated promptly with cardioversion in aortic stenosis. New onset AF in asymptomatic patient with severe AS may be marker of impending symptom onset and they behave very badly. Concurrent hypertension and coronary artery disease, medication should be started at low doses, slowly titrated upwards with close monitoring of blood pressure and symptoms. Indications for AVR in aortic stenosis, generally symptomatic severe aortic stenosis is always an indication. In asymptomatic patient, if patient is developing LV dysfunction, EF is less than 50%, then you should intervene. In asymptomatic patient who is undergoing for any other cardiac surgery like CABG or surgery for aorta or other heart valve, then he should undergo aortic valve replacement. And in moderate AS undergoing CABG or surgery or aorta 2021 guideline for aortic valve replacement, intervention is recommended in LV dysfunction, as I said, in asymptomatic patient with severe aortic stenosis and demonstrable symptom on exercise testing, that is the indication for aortic valve replacement. Intervention should be considered in asymptomatic patient with severe aortic stenosis and systolic LV dysfunction less than 55% without another cause, that is class 2A indication. And intervention should be considered in asymptomatic patient with severe aortic stenosis and sustained fall in BP greater than 20 mm Hg during exercise testing, that is class 2A indication. And in patient with asymptomatic patients with LVEF more than 55, normal exercise test, if the procedural risk is low and one of the following parameters is present, like very severe aortic stenosis, velocity more than 5 meter per second, mean gradient more than 60 mm Hg, severe valvular calcification assessed by CT coronary calcium score, and Vmax progression more than 0.3 meter per second per year, then it is indication. And one additional criteria is markedly elevated BNP level greater than 3 times for age, sex and corrected normal range, confirmed by repeated measurement and without other explanation. So they have added BNP as a criteria for surgery. It is a class 2A indication. Coming to aortic regurgitation, actually there is no specific therapy to prevent disease progression in aortic regurgitation. Vasodilators like nifedipine, enalapril are effective. Recent prospective studies shows no benefit in reducing severity of aortic regurgitation, preventing LV dilatation or dysfunction, or delaying AVR. Systemic hypertension should be treated as increases the regurgitant flow. So hypertension should be treated in aortic regurgitation. Vasodilators like nifedipine and ACE inhibitors are preferred. Beta blockers should be used with caution as rate decreases diastole prolongs and it increases the regurgitation. So generally patient with aortic regurgitation complains of like nighttime angina. When heart rate decreases, the diastolic runoff increases and they complain of angina. So beta blockers should be avoided as possible. In symptomatic AR, AVR is the treatment of choice. Chronic medical therapy, patient who refuse for surgery or inoperable because of comorbidity. ACE inhibitors, other vasodilators like adrenaline, nifedipine, diuretics and salt restriction should be done. Nitrates are of some benefit in relieving anginal pain in patients with aortic regurgitation. AF and bradyarrhythmia are poorly tolerated and must be treated vigorously. Coming to indication for AVR in aortic regurgitation, symptomatic patient with acute or chronic severe AR is always an indication. In asymptomatic patient, if LV dysfunction occurs, if EF is less than 50%, that is the indication. LV dilatation like LV end diastolic dimension more than 65 and LV end systolic dimension more than 50 mm Hg, and patient is going for other surgery. Coming to aortic root disease, in adult with bicuspid aortic valve, 50% may have aortopathy, aortic root dilatation and increased risk of aortic dissection. In Marfan syndrome, AR may be due to aortic root dilatation with relatively normal valve anatomy. So in that, valve sparing surgery are preferred, only ascending aorta is replaced. Cardiac CT or MRI is needed for evaluation of monitoring of disease severity. This is the Marfan with usually dilated aortic root, causing severe AR. For aortic root disease, beta blockers are reasonable therapy in adults with bicuspid aortic valve and aortic root dilatation diameter between 40 to 50 mm of Hg, 50 mm, when surgery is not yet indicated. In patient with Marfan syndrome, beta blockers may slow the aortic root dilatation, reduce the risk of aortic complication, and should be considered before and after surgery. This is the bicuspid aortic valve. So it affects 1 to 2% of the population. Stenosis is more common and progresses more rapidly. Generally present at young age. High risk for infective endocarditis. Currently there are no effective medical therapy to prevent the progressive valve deterioration. This is the bicuspid aortic valve complicated by infective endocarditis. Coming to tricuspid valve disease, rheumatic heart disease is the most common cause. Most patients with rheumatic tricuspid valve disease present with TR or combination of TS and TR, always accompanied by mitral valve disease. Intensive sodium restriction and diuretic therapy is required. This is the severe aortic regurgitation dilated RARV. In tricuspid regurgitation, diuretics are the antifailure therapy and furosemide 40 to 160 mg. Spironolactone specially indicated in patient with TR and RV failure. Doses of spironolactone 25 to 100 mg daily. And diuretic treatment generally reduces the severity of TR by relieving RV distension and lower the RA pressure. Indication of tricuspid valve repair. Severe TR in the setting of surgery for multivalvular disease. Severe primary TR when symptomatic. And prophylactic tricuspid valve annuloplasty for asymptomatic mild to moderate TR in patients undergoing left heart surgery with tricuspid annular dilatation. Pulmonary stenosis is most common cause is congenital. Rare causes are rheumatic and carcinoid syndrome. Mild to moderate PS, there are no intervention required. In severe PS, pulmonary balloon valvotomy can be done. In pulmonary regurgitation, most commonly due to pulmonary arterial hypertension, management of primary condition is required. And vasodilator therapy for pulmonary arterial hypertension to reduce secondary PR. And valve replacement are needed in very rare cases. So coming to, there is no specific therapy to prevent progression of valvular heart disease. This focuses on prevention and treatment of complication. Periodic evaluation to optimize the timing of intervention is required. General health maintenance including good oral hygiene is